ice, totally fine. And now this is like the cooking part, you know, where you're throwing it on the fire to like cook it for food. With this, our mode is ice. So I'm going to stir this for probably 15 seconds. You can use your finger. You can use a chopstick, works really well. We got these fancy bar spoons because we're fancy bar people, but they don't really functionality. They're just fun, but they don't make the drink taste better unless you're paying $15 for them. And then they make it taste way better. I like to taste mine. Oh, it tastes so good. So I'm going to strain this into, I got a glass of ice. You guys will have your Davenport ones. We're going to strain this right in there. All right. So in that kit, you got the bottoming cherries. I'm just going to add one cherry into that. So we got a full old fashioned, the original cocktail. So if you're following along at home, it should look some realm of this. I sure hope. This is the original, one of the original drinks. An old fashioned cocktail was what it was started with. And it was just had some spirit, some bitters, some sugar, and water. And then that kind of devolved. So that's kind of has all these things. I hope yours tastes as good as mine, because that tastes pretty good. If you guys want to follow along, if you find that recipe, if I went too fast, you can look through that recipe, and then we can kind of come back after you've had one and everything's a little bit easier to digest and I'm a little funnier. And we'll just go through some stuff about Angel's Envy, some stuff about whiskey. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have, but at least now you've got one drink in you, and maybe make another one while they're talking. So I can bring it back to them.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Absolutely. Thank you, Darren, for all of that info there. I followed right along. Like Darren said, for those of you that maybe joined a little late, we put the link to the recipe there in the chat, so you'll be able to check it out there. So let's get on with our presentation. As you're sipping away on your drink, I'd like to introduce you to the speakers that we'll have today. So myself, my name is Ben Grimion. I'm the Senior Account Executive here at Davenport Group. I'll be leading the charge here. But we also have Brian Moran, who's one of our Senior Sales Engineers here at Davenport Group. We'll be covering some of the pieces here around data protection. But we have some special guests here from Davenport Group, both Adam Oakley and Steve Orpaio, who are our engineers that do our data protection implementation. So you're not just talking to sales guys today, you're actually hearing from the real world install engineers that do this on a daily basis. So let's go over kind of the agenda that we're going to cover today. First, I want to tell you a little bit about Davenport Group, because some of you may have not heard who we are, so I'll give you an overview there. We'll also cover just very briefly the overall Dell Technologies data protection portfolio, with a highlight in two of those areas in that portfolio. We're going to highlight those today, with our main subject being that cyber recovery vault solution that you tuned in for, as well as the whiskey. Then we're going to have a Q&A, but I'd also encourage you to have your questions throughout this presentation. You know, when we do these webinars, I like to remind customers or potential customers, this is for you. This is to educate you around what are the data protection or cyber threat recovery solutions that are out there. And here's some information from real world users, real world installers around this. Then after we're done about talking technology, we'll jump back into Angel's Envy and let Darren tell us a little bit more about that fantastic company, fantastic whiskey, and we'll kind of go from there. So who is Davenport Group? To put it simply, we are a full-scale IT solution provider. And I know there's a lot of things on the screen here to look that we cover, but we really cover the whole range from mouse to the cloud as far as solutions out there. You can see the solutions that we're focused on, some of our accreditations, but what really makes us different And I've been doing this for almost 19 years. But what really makes us different is the relationship that we build with customers. We focus on that relationship with customers to not only help you out with the solution that we're talking about today, if it's cyber recovery vault, virtualization, and so forth, we want to keep helping you out over and over again. And so, with that focus, you're going to see tons of dedication from our sales team, from our engineering team that does the implementations. You're going to really build that relationship at all levels within Davenport Group. And that's what really makes us different there. So, once we get done with this presentation, I will let you know that we will, the account executives that line up to wherever you are in the country, we'll be reaching out to you to follow up for deeper dive conversations around Cyber Recovery Vault or any of the solutions that are here on our page that you're seeing right now. So before we get into the presentation, I'll turn it over to Brian Moran to kick us off. I will let you know, hey, if you've got questions, I encourage you to ask them. We get tons of questions every day, every week around, hey, how do I prevent or recover or make it easier to not get suckered in to ransomware? And that's a big key that we'll talk about here today. We'll also be doing some follow-up presentations around that because it is just a huge topic. I think I have conversations around preventative measures or recovery measures around ransomware probably 2 or 3 times a day. So I encourage you to, if you got a question, 9 times out of 10, there's 2 or 3 people in the same webinar that have the exact same question. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask that question. Or if you feel more comfortable, just ask it in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat and interrupt the speaker if we have any questions that come up. And so I encourage you, pay attention, enjoy your drink, and ask questions away. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Brian, to kick us off with our presentation.
Great, thank you, Ben. Yeah, as Ben said, just to reiterate, anytime if you have a question, through my portion or through Adam or Steve's portion, please feel free to come off mute. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, but either way, I try to make these as informational as possible. There are been a lot of announcements and advancements in the Dell Technologies data protection portfolio here just in the last within the last year or so. And so we try to put these sessions together just to make them as educational for you as possible. But the best way that we can make sure that you are getting the information that you want is ask questions. If there's something that you don't know, ask now. If it's something that we don't know, we'll track down the answer and make sure to follow up. So as I mentioned, there have been quite a few announcements just within the last year that we wanted to highlight. So for a long time, Dell EMC has been a market leader in the data protection portfolio, whether you're familiar with or already using technologies like Avamar or Networker, maybe even PowerProtect Data Manager, on the software side, or for many years, Dell EMC has been the leader in the purpose-built backup appliance space with their data domain appliance, and all of those technologies are something that we build on when we talk about the Cyber Recovery Vault. But there in the middle, see that cloud icon, and that's something that I wanted to highlight just a little bit before we get into the Vault solution that we'll focus on for most of the session. So here, just in the last late spring, so April-May timeframe of just this of 2021, Dell Technologies announced a partnership and released a new backup as a service offering called PowerProtect Backup Service. This is completely software as a service. And so what that means is there is no hardware to install on premises, no applications to install or configure. It is completely a backup to the cloud offering. It works for on-premises workloads. So if you've got physical environment, virtualized environment, a lot of client and endpoint protection as well. So specifically in the last year or couple of years, we've seen a large focus of folks that had historically been working centrally in an office, it is easy to push out backups and make sure that those client devices were being protected, when everyone was plugged into the local LAN network. Now that folks are more often working from home or working remotely, that requirement is still there to make sure that, these now remote workers, that data on those client machines is being backed up and protected. What we can do with this offering is, back up directly from those clients directly to the cloud, so no longer having to worry about when the end user is connected to the VPN and trying to schedule those backups at specific times based on the user being connected. Now we're still able to protect that client device directly to the cloud. Another big thing here lately is more and more folks are moving to software as a service like Office 365. Exchange on-prem is still around. It will still be around for the next several years, but more and more often we're talking to folks that have either moved or are planning to move their email environments to Office 365. While Microsoft has some recovery capabilities, a lot of times what Microsoft offers is not the same as what you are used to providing in terms of retention and recovery capabilities for your email environments when you are running Exchange on-prem. Now with this PowerProtect backup service, you're able to protect those software as a service offerings like email, like Teams, like SharePoint in the cloud or OneDrive. As more and more of these services are moving to software as a service, there needs to be a way to make sure that data is protected and secured. And this PowerProtect backup service is one portal to be able to protect those on-prem workloads to the cloud, as well as those client, whether it's laptop or desktop, remotely, even phone or tablet device, and the software as a service like Office 365, Salesforce, the G Suite, etc. So one portal, one cloud, backend infrastructure. It's a subscription service from Dell, and I think it's a fantastic offering to augment what they already had with the market leading, Avamar, Networker, Data Domain, et cetera, that a lot of folks have been using for a long time. Ben, I see you joining me on camera. Was there a question or?
Wasn't a question yet, but I wanted to just open it up. Does anybody have any questions around PowerProtect backup as a service? Obviously, I think probably 90% of the folks on here are using some type of cloud application out there, but don't think about backing it up. And this allows you to really do that cloud to cloud backup, on-prem to cloud backup, or hybrid in there. Were there any questions from anybody that's on here? Yes. Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple from there. I mean, cloud backup is cloud backup. So one question Matthew had on here was, I see O365, but what about SharePoint and Dynamics?
Yes, I know SharePoint, absolutely. So SharePoint in 365. I will have to double check on Dynamics unless Steve or Adam know off the top of your heads. But I mean, that's something that we can verify.
Yeah, Brian, just to add to that, correct with SharePoint, also do Teams and OneDrive, but we will have to look up Dynamics.
All right, we got a challenge now. If we can get that answer by the time of the end of the presentation here, we can put it there and answer your question. Thank you, Matthew, for the question. Like I said, keep asking away. Oh, Richard has one. Does it impact end users? And hold backup users would have to be off the servers?
So it's an agent-based. It's an agent-based backup. So like if you're talking about protecting your on-premises environment, like server infrastructure to the cloud, if the question is around like open files, that's something else I think I would want to follow up on. Like if you have a NAS environment and someone is currently accessing files, so it's an open file. Otherwise, I mean, typically those backups are scheduled off hours, and so that first backup is going to be a full backup, and then after that, it's an incremental backup forever. That is typically scheduled, after operating hours. But in a 24/7 environment, I know that could be a challenge. Again, Steve, any thought on open files, assuming that is what Richard is referring to?
Yeah, no, unless there's a certain lock, I can see that maybe having an issue like for databases or something like that, but not necessarily for like Word documents or something, but we will definitely check that out. And there's not much load, as Brian was mentioning, that the first one's, full backup, that'll take a while, and also depending on your bandwidth to the cloud. Then after that, the agent that's installed on the actual system will see, okay, what have I backed up already? And then only pass new and unique data up into the cloud. So those secondary, third, and so on backups run much quicker.
Yeah, and some of the other questions that we're seeing here from Kevin, he's asking about SQL and Oracle backups. Do you have agents on those, like your typical backups? And then also, what is a backup on Teams? Does it just do the files, chat? What's kind of the backup there?
Within Teams, I know you can back up chats and Teams groups and the backend file repository. Like if folks are pasting files to Teams or within Teams. So basically, Teams can entirely be protected. It's licensed per user. Is the only license there. I saw a question about like where does it back up to? It does not back up to Office 365. It actually backs up to it's hosted on AWS. It is the backend infrastructure. So it's actually copying that data out of 365 or out of Microsoft's cloud entirely and protecting it in a separate cloud environment. You don't have to have any kind of AWS credentials or accounts or even skill set. It's a very simple portal for PowerProtect backup service. It just happens to be in AWS. I'm not familiar with specific agents for SQL or other databases.
Just a quick search looks like Oracle version 18, 19, some version 12 and 11 as well are compatible with that.
Yeah, we can definitely set up deeper dive conversations on the PowerProtect backup as a service. Like you've seen with the question, it is something that's very popular. A lot of us have used these technologies that are there in the cloud and are concerned about the retention of that data. So if you have remaining questions around PowerProtect backup service, we can talk after the Cyber Recovery Vault, or again, your account executive will be following up with you that covers your area for those deeper conversations. So with that, what I'm going to do is transition over to the main topic of today, which is around the Cyber Recovery Vault. This is something that's really on everybody's mind every day. I have these conversations where this is relatable twice a day now. And with that, who'll be covered the first part is going to be Adam Oakley, who's one of our senior engineers who handles our data protection implementations. I will turn it over to Adam. Go ahead, bud.
All right. Thank you, Ben. So the first thing we're going to discuss is what are we protecting against, right? You already have a DR strategy. Why do you need this? So the typical DR scenario is going to be something physical, hurricane, tornado, Godzilla, things like that, right? And it normally happens and it's done. The cyber resilience, you're protecting against malicious attack or ransomware, whatever you want to call it. They come in and it's something that's ongoing. It's going to be, you're going to have to turn off your main pipe to the outside world. You're going to have to do some investigating to see what's corrupted, what's not. Then you're going to have to recover from there. So it's a different scenario. And coming from my background, I came from a very large hospital management company. We had over 200 sites. And I was there for 5 years in the backup department. In that 5 years, I did 3, maybe 4 disaster recovery scenarios. The worst one was probably a septic pipe that ran above the data center blew up. So that was probably the worst one. in the terms of a cyber recovery event, we probably had 30 to 40 in that same time frame. So 10 times more we encountered bad actors trying to either corrupt our data, to either use it, so steal our data, or corrupt it and ransom it out so we couldn't use it and then have to pay them to get it back. So we could move on to the next slide, please. So how does this product work? This product is highly customizable. So first we'll talk about just the main focus of the product, and then we can get into a little bit, how do we customize it and make it work for you? So on the left-hand side, you can see there's a standard production environment. You got your application servers, your standard backup media server. It's going to write the backups to a data domain. And Brian and Ben had talked about it earlier. That's that industry leader deduplication solid workhorse device. That data domain is going to have a direct connection to another data domain. And on that connection, it's going to be automated through the cyber recovery server. Those two items, the replication data domain and the cyber recovery server you see on the right-hand side, they're in what is considered the vault. That connection is a logical connection, and it closes once replication is complete. The only traffic that can go over that connection is replication data. All other ports are closed. There's no management going over. And then the second that replication is completed, the cyber recovery server is going to logically turn off that port, so they won't see each other anymore. And that'll happen at your set interval. You can do it once a day. You can do it 8 times a day. It's all up to you. Once that data domain in the vault gets that data, it's going to create an immutable copy. So it doesn't matter what administrator access you have, what passcodes, what access to that data domain you have, you cannot logically delete that data once it's had an immutable copy created. You'd have to pull the drives to run them over with, a bulldozer or something. The vault itself, once we have the data in the vault, then that's where we can start getting real customized. We can add a CyberSense server. That's a utility that will scan the data sets that are incoming once they've landed, and it will give you updates on if there's any type of suspect data or not. We can also build a recovery server environment, so spin up a couple ESXi hosts, a vCenter, and we can recover data within the vault to make sure it's good before we send it back into production. It's a very customizable environment, and each customer, we can have a conversation and see what setup would work best for you. Within the vault, we can also spin up a firewall or a data diode setup for any type of daily reporting, and that's available as well. So then we'll go to the next slide, please. And this one's pretty useful, especially for anyone that's in the financial field. Sheltered Harbor is a certification framework. It was created to protect data in the event of these very specific type attacks. And just a fun fact, out of all US-based deposit accounts, over 70% of them are ran through companies that have this certification. So it's pretty widely accepted in that industry. The product, Cyber Recovery, is the only product that has received this certification that you can use for this to achieve this certification. So I think that's rather telling. And we can go to the next slide, please. And that'll move on over to Steve.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Adam. So yeah, Adam was kind of detailing what Dell Technologies terms their cyber recovery vault, which is that it's that extra copy of your data that's locked down, so those threat actors can't access it. So what I'm going to talk about is your critical rebuild materials. What that means is, and this is applicable to most any type of, let's say, disaster recovery, business continuity, or even like a cyber event, such as we were kind of describing with ransomware, those kinds of things. So the critical rebuild materials, what do you need to rebuild your environment? A lot of people just think, I backed up my, 5, 6, 10, 20, 30 servers. I can restore those and that'll rebuild my environment. But there's much more to it depending on the extent of what the actual incident was. So you almost have to think about it as, what do I have to do if I need to restore my entire environment? Because what we've seen on certain incidents, again, is that switch configurations get erased, those kinds of things that you may not even think about. So, okay, how do you rebuild that? So I'm just going to kind of go down this list. Again, this is not a exhausted list. I'm sure there's other things depending on your specific use cases, but again, just kind of value added to, what do I need to back up? How do I need to protect this? And then how do I protect that backup data? So think about your authentication, identity, and security. If you have any certificates, you need to copy those into the vault or onto whatever storage. Again, this is, at this point, this is vendor agnostic. How are you protecting your data? Certificates, Active Directory. Do you have a copy of Active Directory? Can you rebuild that from whatever backups you're doing? DNS dumps. You may have to rebuild your entire DNS systems, all your zones. Do you need to dump, whether that's a dump that can be installed or restored back into your DNS servers, or is that even just a spreadsheet, that I can rebuild from? Event logs, that's another thing, part of security, the SIEM, your security and incident messaging. What alerts have been gone out, because you're going to need that when you have to figure out, when you go into remediation. What am I going to do? What actually happened? When did this happen? What systems did they occur? So you're going to need that audit and that security trail to do that kind of detective work. Networking, I kind of mentioned that. What if I have to rebuild a switch config or a firewall config, or even something as simple as what's just an overarching network diagram, so I can kind of understand where things are, what my subnets, my VLANs are. Another thing is, okay, firmware, microcode, or patches for your switches, because you may have to reload that. You may have to get new hardware. Again, this could be for a cyber event or disaster recovery. If I need to get new hardware, what firmware level was I at? Do I have those available for restore? Because another thing, as Adam mentioned, is if there is a cyber event, generally the first thing you do is cut off all external access. So how do I download my microcode for my switch if I don't have internet access? It's good to have that already, and you already know where it is. You already know what version you're at and can easily restore that. Storage, SAN, and array configurations. What are my LUN IDs? How are my SAN configured? What data stores maybe do I have? The sizes and numbers for my data stores if you have a virtual environment. Backup hardware and configuration. Again, let's say you do have this vault where everything was protected, but you still need to rebuild your production backup environment at some point. So you'll have to be doing that. And again, microcode, firmware for any of that storage environment. Intellectual property. Now, this is a big one, because depending on what your organization does, what is your core information? What is your intellectual property that you need to save no matter what? Are you a software developer that can go ahead and, what is my source code? What are my proprietary algorithms, developer libraries? What is that kind of stuff that is unique that you have created as your own organization? Those kinds of things. Host and build tools. Okay, so now we're back down to our servers, our virtual infrastructure. Again, we're back down to firmware, microcode for that. Do I have the ISOs for my Windows, Linux, whatever operating systems, so I can quickly restore those if need be, depending on what your restore scenario is. Vendor software, again, golden images, configuration and settings that may be unique to your environment. All extremely helpful to have on hand whenever you are trying to do this rebuild, because the last thing you want to do is have to search through this when you're under stress and, on hour 36 of a restore scenario. You don't want to have to start thinking about where these little things are. You want to know where everything is. And that's where documentation comes in hand. It's one thing to have all these things, document it. Please keep it updated. If you make a change, I know that, worked in IT for couple of decades, I'll say. And that was the hardest thing for me, is to just, as new things came on, I've got to update my documentation, but it is a necessary evil. You know, what is your configuration management database, or however you're keeping your configuration setups? Do you have DR or cyber recovery run books? Because that's another huge thing, like I mentioned earlier, is that you don't want to have to be thinking about what the next step is. You want that written down. Know that I just look at my book. I go step by step, and everything goes. Please test all these. Of course, any of these you want to do any kind of testing for DR or recovery restores. You also want to have HR contacts. So, you know, maybe, you know, you've lost your address book, and all of a sudden, you know, that's an exchange. Now, okay, what are people's email addresses? What are their home phones or cell phones? That's the only way I can get in touch with them. Those kinds of things. You're going to want that. So again, those are critical rebuild suggestions. You definitely want to be on the front side of that, and you know, get that down. And again, please, just that's huge. I've been through several scenarios where, on both sides, where we had minimal documentation, and also where we had everything down to the letter. It's so easy, if everything is documented, that, you know, you may not have your key players on hand when you're trying to do those restores, or maybe they need a break after working for 24 hours straight. Hand that document to somebody else and they can continue on, that kind of stuff. So next slide, please. So it's not just me, or, you know, Dell Technologies or Davenport Group telling you, you know, what's a good idea. We have a lot of these organizations that are basically saying the same thing, touting these virtues. The FFIEC, which is a federal mandated interagency body that looks over Federal Reserve, FDIC, national credit unions, basically most financial institutions, saying, you know, an offsite or a immutable or an air gap backup limits your exposure so that you can restore back. GDPR, kind of put that one in there, and you may not think about that. General Data Protection Regulation really applies to people in the European Union. So you may think, what does that have to do with me? If you are doing business with anyone in the EU, or have data on individuals in the EU, that actually does apply to you. And one of the great quotes in their documentations mentions, everything you do in your organization must, by design and default, consider data protection. So they're holding that like as a very high standard. So again, depending on data protection, can take many forms. Is that a system goes down? Is that a hurricane, tornado, flood? Is that a cyber event? So just think about these different scenarios and how you're going to recover from them. HIPAA for healthcare, the healthcare industry, again, maintaining backups offline and unavailable, because I don't know if we mentioned that, but we've, you know, seen multiple and helped mitigate and remediate a couple of cyber attacks, you know, with Davenport Group. And we've actually seen the threat actors come in, and if they have access to your servers, they'll have access, you know, if they have access to your backup systems, I've seen them delete backups and then encrypt data. So you won't even know that that's happening until after the backups are already deleted. So making sure they're offline and unavailable to those threat actors is huge. The FBI, they're basically the lead federal agency in charge of cybercrime or investigating cyber attacks. Again, they're saying the same thing. Ensure backups are not connected to the network. They are backing up. And then they're saying physically store them offline. That could be something as simple as a tape backup if you're old school, or now even though we're doing disk to disk backups, you know, how is that disk backup segmented from your normal network? Is it offline? That kind of stuff. So next slide, please. So kind of gets into the why start now. Cyber insurance. A lot of you have either already have policies or looking into getting policies. And you're, you know, Same thing as homeowners or car insurance. You know, the premiums are always rising based on risk, you know, and exposure to the insurance companies. So you want to keep those premiums down. Certain mitigation efforts on your side can keep those down if you can prove that you're doing due diligence in having these offline backups and those kinds of things and having these DR plans. You know, even though you think you may be doing good, we could see we've seen policy cancellations where the insurance companies will cancel you if they'll say, you know, you must meet these certain standards or we're going to cancel you. So we've seen those. And what could even be worse than that is payment denial, where, okay, I've had this policy, I thought everything was good, I had an incident, and then all of a sudden, you know, the insurance adjusters get involved and want to deny the payment for whatever reason, for whatever loophole they may find. So, you know, again, reiterating, taking care, having a good plan, and knowing how to use it. So again, why start now? The real cost of ransomware, I guess the numbers are kind of all over the place. Averaging, they're saying about, you know, $500,000, but that could be anywhere from multi-million-dollar large organizations getting hit with ransomware and what their ransom is, at down to smaller things, which could be $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. So getting down to the monetary, there's that. Regulatory fines, depending on your organization and what regulating bodies that are over you. That's another thing. Operational downtime. What is it going to cost your organization to be down for, you know, a day, a week, a month, those kinds of things until you can come back online? Business survival. That's another thing. Depending on how long your business has been offline, can you still survive? Can you still operate business once you come back online after being gone for or down for a month? Or what if you cannot rebuild your environment and you're basically starting from scratch, where you have none of your old data, that kind of stuff. Things to think about. Then last but not least, reputation. What is it going to be? Okay, so you got hit by ransomware. Maybe you mitigated it, got back, everything is up and fine, but then you are still have that reputation of, oh, that organization XYZ, they were hit by ransomware, so maybe they're, you know, something's up with that we may need to look into, maybe doing business with someone else. So it is your reputation. And, you know, as you've seen with a lot of the large Colonial Pipeline, even Sony back a few years ago, where that did serious damage to their reputation. And I think that's it for my slides. Any questions on this? Again, this was kind of a high level. We invite you to ask questions, follow up with this, follow up with your account executives, and we can get into specifics on how Dell Technologies and Davenport can help you. So back to you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So if you feel comfortable, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask questions away on here, or feel free to put them in the chat there. Hopefully you're enjoying your drink here, and we'll wait here for a little bit for some questions. All right. Anyone? Well, cool. Like Steve said, and I said earlier, your account executive that covers your area will be reaching out to you from Davenport Group to have deeper conversations around this. I know every time that I've brought into Cyber Recovery Vault solutions with customers, there's a lot of questions because they've either gone through some type of ransomware event, or they're looking to try to really prevent, or know somebody that's been in one and looking to try to prevent that. Now, one thing Brandon brought up from Davenport Group here is he said, is it a one-size-fits-all solution? And I think Steve hit on this, but I've seen it firsthand from my end, is no, it's not a one-size-fits-all in there. It's very customized on what amount of data that you want to protect, how you want to protect that, and the way that you want to really wrap your mind around it. I know we went at a high level, and some details here is really it's an offline backup that is only accessible by standing in front of the gear there. So it is that secure in your environment out there. And I highly encourage somebody like myself or some of my peers here at Davenport Group to get involved to help you out with this, because not only do we put together that customized solution for you around Cyber Recovery Vault based on your goals, we'll also be the ones implementing the solution. So you'll have Steve or Adam or anybody from our backup team will be actually implementing the solution, training you on it, and standing behind those implementations, like we do with every single one of our implementations, standing behind those, focusing on those relationships there. So I encourage you, when your account executive reaches out to you, to set up a follow-up. We are really looking forward to that. And we're actually, as a thank you, if you are willing to have a further discussion around this, we are going to send you a special bottle of Angel's Envy Rye Whiskey. So we encourage, it gives you two reasons: not only find out more about Davenport Group and cyber recovery, but also you get another bottle of whiskey in there. So be on the lookout for that. Probably either tomorrow or next week, your account executive in your area will be reaching out, and look forward to talking with you there. Feel free to keep asking questions while we hear a little bit more from Darren from Angel's Envy. I would like to turn it back over to him to kind of tell us a little bit more, maybe another recipe. I don't know what your plan is here. So Darren, I like your hat first off, looking good there. But I'll turn it back over to you to tell us a little bit more about Angel's Envy and go from there.
That sounds great. Thank you, Ben. Yeah. Hello, welcome back. So yeah, if you guys, I can see your chat. My idea is I want to just kind of talk through Angel's Envy just a little bit and some whiskey. And if you guys just keep throwing questions in the chat, if either to Ben and that team or any like whiskey stuff, even if you want to just tell me you like the whiskey, just so I can see, so it's not just me talking into this void that is the internet, that would be lovely. So just let me know if you like the drink, if it was overly complicated, if you think whiskey is stupid and you don't know why we did this, any questions. So as you see, so I got another drink that I made, that we made in between this, that was like a whiskey sour, another really fun one. So I used Angel's Envy, and then some of the piloncillo, the sugar syrup, and then just some fresh lemon juice. So basically kind of like a 2 parts, and then like 3/4 parts and 3/4 parts. Super simple, shook it up. So if you have, you already have in your kit just some lemons. You could use lime, but lemon works a little bit better with the whiskey. And just basically like 2 parts, and then 1 part or like a little less than 1 part, but the equal parts of the sugar and the lemon juice. So as long as those are equal, it'll be a balanced drink, and you can just add as much whiskey as you want. But let's talk about Angel's Envy, because you already have a bottle of bourbon and you're about to hopefully get a bottle of that rye very soon. So we are based in Louisville, Kentucky. We are an American whiskey company that has bourbon and rye whiskey. 95% of like bourbon is made in Kentucky, but it has to just be made legally anywhere in the US. So I'm currently in Austin, Texas. There's some beautiful Austin bourbons. Before, my home was Minnesota, and there's a lot of cool Minnesota whiskeys. But the Kentucky just really has a very specific climate, and they have a very, very beautiful and soft water that works really well for both horses and for whiskey. Because water is a huge part of the cocktail, a part of the whiskey. So that's kind of what makes it really special. So for our bourbon, if we're gonna talk just about the mash bill, and that is like what is like whiskey. Whiskey is old grain juice. It's just that. Mostly corn, and then it can have like a flavoring grain. So we have mostly corn in this. So you have to make it out of something. So instead of like with wine making grapes, we're taking 72% corn, 18% of it is rye, and then 10% malted barley. So we're taking all these grains and we're fermenting them, making essentially beer without hops, like a brewer's beer. And then once you have that alcohol, we're distilling it out and aging that. For the rye whiskey, we're using 95% of it as a rye, 95% rye mash bill with just 5% malted barley. The big difference I got the rye here, I got the bourbon here. The big difference is that with the bourbon, and you think about corn, sweet corn, like corn. If you think about like cornbread, you got that like a kind of a sweeter, mellower cornbread. If you ever had rye bread, it's sharp, it's spicy, and those notes of flavor kind of really go through into the juice. So while rye whiskey is generally going to be like sharper, punchier version, bourbon is going to have a little bit of a softer kind of palate. The big part with Angels is that after we age our whiskeys, we're not done yet. We blend those barrels together and then we age them again. So in the case of our bourbon, our flagship that you guys are all sipping, we are taking these barrels and we're blending them together for consistency, and then we're putting them in a port wine barrel. So before 4 to 6 years in a whiskey barrel, then it goes into a port wine barrel for 4 to 6 months. Before then, we take these barrels and they're a little too hot to drink, so we add some water to it. And barrel it down to 86.6 proof, and then put in the bottle and ship it right to you. For the rye whiskey, that if you are all lucky enough to get the next time, we're taking like a 7 to 9 year old rye whiskey after it's aged in those whiskey barrels, and then finishing it in these Caribbean rum barrels for up to 18 months. So you're getting like a lot of this crazy molasses. It's almost like a pancake breakfast note coming from those barrels. Because you're getting about 80% of that flavor from the barrel. We also do some limited releases of our cask strength that we release once a year. That's just kind of a collection of the Angel's Envy bourbon, but that's at the proof, so undiluted. So yeah, if you guys have any Angel's Envy questions, any thoughts, Ben, it looks like you might want to answer some of these.
Yeah, so well, first off, we got tons of fans on here on the chat. I'm not sure if you're able to see all that.
Yeah.
But a lot of fans, it's even gotten some people through their COVID quarantine times. So hopefully it helped them with a little cough syrup there too. So good to hear, good to hear. I think we did have one question around, do y'all have any type of barrel program?
So we do. So it depends. Whoever's asking, you will throw your state in there. We are releasing a single barrel program that is right around 100-ish proof. I've seen that a little bit in Texas, but we're doing some like single barrel releases, which is very rare for Angel's Envy. It's something we just started, so it's rolling out very slowly. People way above my pay grade are the ones that make those decisions, and they go through a lot of distribution areas, as all alcohol does. So hopefully we'll kind of see it in all 50 states in the next, however long it takes. It's always really hard to comment on things that aren't quite there. But yes, we are doing a single barrel after it's finished in the port, and then it's proofed down just a little bit. So yes, you will see that. I like it better than Eagle Rare. Awesome. That's cool. Me too.
This is awesome. Any questions out there for Darren, specifically around Angel's Envy or whiskey or anything bartending, whatever you got out there?
Yeah, please. I hope that this little kit, this small slice of bartending, mixology, gets people interested in cocktails, because they aren't as scary as you think. Yeah. Do I prefer syrups or old school sugar vibe? I like the syrups, because if I were to do like the old school old fashioned, I get my glass, I throw a sugar cube, maybe soda water or regular water and bitters, and muddle it. You're basically making simple syrup, right? You're just muddling it. And what I like about this is that all the granulates, all the sugar is completely dissolved, and I'm kind of controlling the ratio and the consistency. So, this is like equal parts. You can kind of see it's the viscosity of it. If you add less water and you make it even like more viscous syrup, you can kind of change the body of the cocktail. And so it's something that like sometimes things can taste a little thin. Like you think about like soups, sometimes they're thicker, thinner. The same can kind of happen with cocktails. So I prefer the syrups. It just makes it very, very consistent. But there's nothing wrong with sugar cubes too. And I like the kind of darker sugar with the darker spirits.
I agree. Is there anything special with proof syrup?
Proof? I don't understand the
I'm not sure.
proof. The proof so the Earl Giles is a local to Minnesota where I'm from. And they make just another brand. I don't.
Oh, it's just another brand.
Yeah, I guess I haven't tried them, but I mean, there's lots of small craft syrups coming out, and what's cool is that they are consistent. They'll add different flavors. So I mean, I would encourage everyone to try them all because they are usually bartenders or bar people that have kind of started out making consistent syrups from things that they enjoyed.
Yeah,
what's
everybody
fun
kind
is
of has
that,
their own favorites out there.
Yeah, I mean, we've done, and when we ran a bar before, did like smoke to this with like applewood and did an old fashioned that way. You can add, did like rosemary, honey. I mean, there's so many different variations. I think the biggest thing if you're doing stuff at home, if you find like the ratio is what's important. If you're like this old fashioned, this tastes good. If you buy some lemons, ideally fresh lemons to make whiskey sour, and you find that ratio, that's great. Let's say you want to add make a sugar syrup yourself. You can add some kind of herb, like what tastes good with whiskey. You can add any kind of fruit. You can add different herbs to it to make those kind of and elevate it a little bit. So it's pretty fun. If you were to take like this drink and you add some blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, and added like some lemon juice in that, just taste it. Too tart, add a little more sugar. Too sweet, add a little bit more acid, which would be like the lemon juice. And that's like a bramble, another old school drink. So there is, I think, if you can kind of conceptualize why we, how we did this, which for the old fashioned was just about a teaspoon, quarter ounce of this with 2 ounces of whiskey and a little dash of bitters. The ratio is more important than the actual recipe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we got another question. What's the difference between an old fashioned and one of my dad's favorite drinks, a Manhattan, out there?
Yeah, so the old fashioned is the original cocktail. A Manhattan is going to use some sweet vermouth as its like sweetener, as its modifier. So there's no sugar in the Manhattan. There is very similar things. You've got bitters, you've got whiskey, and then you have sweet vermouth. So sweet vermouth is a aromatized and fortified wine. So you're essentially taking kind of a sweeter and flavored wine and using that. But another like delicious cocktail. So if you wanted to make that, you could go to any store and find just like probably ideally the smallest bottle of like sweet vermouth that you can, and use that with this because you have the rest of the ingredients, and just replace the sugar with this. And that kind of a fun and easy way to think about the Manhattan is the area code for Manhattan, which is 212, 2 parts whiskey, 1 part vermouth, and then 2 dashes of bitters.
Yeah, John just let us know that too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny.
And that is like, there's cocktails like that named after all the boroughs. There's a Bronx cocktail. There's a Brooklyn cocktail is really cool. A Bronx uses orange juice and it's not good, which is why you've never heard of it. But there, that was like the most popular drink. And I mean, it's a classic for a reason. What's also really fun is if you make a big batch of them and let it sit, everything kind of melds together. But that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, please, if you go and you buy a cheap, you can buy a inexpensive bottle of sweet vermouth, put it in the fridge. It's wine. It will taste less good the longer it's open. So stick it in and use it within a few months. But it's like a great way to kind of add to this realm of the cocktail kit that the Davenport sent you already.
Awesome. Hey, where are y'all located at again?
So I am currently in Austin, Texas.
Right.
Angel's Envy is in Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay.
And so we don't have a celebrity telling you to buy it. We have a ton of whiskey guardians, and we're here to kind of talk, educate, do whatever it takes to get people to drink our delicious juice. So there's probably 70 of us throughout the US and Australia and Europe to kind of do this job at, kind of instead of one big person. So
how do you get to become a whiskey guardian? That's my question.
So I was a bartender for probably a decade. ran a bar, worked in a lot of them, and this is kind of the natural progression. They joke that for bartenders, you become a bar manager, then you become a brand ambassador, and then a realtor. So I'm kind of in the middle. Yeah, it's just kind of a fun natural progression into it, and it's better hours too.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're running. We're past 5 o'clock here, Central Time at least. I know we got people all over the country. I thought it'd be cool. Are there any other questions out there for Darren?
Yeah. If there's any other, please. There's no stupid question. We're all drinking and having fun.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I see some folks are leaving on here. They heard it said it was 5 o'clock, so they got the heck out of here. I would like to do one funny thing. I know Darren will participate here, but everybody that's on here, if you get off camera, let's just do a little cheers, because we're all separated out here, and it'd be nice to just cheers with other folks. So go ahead, everybody, get off camera if you feel comfortable doing it. Oh, yeah. Hey, Mark, how's it going? Well, cool. Let's do a cheers. Hey, y'all have a good evening and wish you all the best. Cheers, everybody. Thank you for attending, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.